In Palestine, more than 22,300 people have been killed and about 57,000 have been wounded since last October 7th with the intensified siege by the government of Israel. Alba-TCP rejects the judicial decision of Argentina that endorses the seizure of the Venezuelan Emtrasur aircraft. And in the United States, gun violence continues. Authorities reported a new shooting at a high school in Iowa. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, more than 22,300 people have been killed and about 57,000 have been wounded since last October 7th with the intensified siege by the government of Israel. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that 70% of the victims are women and children. It also reported that during the last 24 hours, the Israeli army killed another 125 civilians in new attacks on the Gaza Strip. After the constant bombardment by Israel, more than 1 million people are living in overcrowded makeshift shelters and in unsuitable conditions due to the worsening humanitarian crisis in the territory. Dozens of Palestinians gather in health centers, streets, and markets for funeral ceremonies and to bid farewell to those killed by Israeli forces shelling the Gaza Strip. Details in the following report.
Women, elders, and children bid farewell to their loved ones killed by the occupation forces. The relatives of dead victims gather inside the Nasser hospital located in Khan Yunis to say their last farewell.
They are all civilians, children from the age of 8 or 10, at the most 12 years old, unarmed civilians, men, humble women. None of them pose any danger to Israel. They are ordinary people.
In the northern Gaza Strip, streets and markets are the sites for the burial of bodies, due to the danger of approaching the cemetery, as they could be attacked by the Tel Aviv forces.
We are burying here temporarily because the Jews were in the cemeteries with many machines, so we could not enter, and we proceeded to bury here momentarily while waiting for a truce and to be able to make the transfer. God rest the martyrs in His glory and made the situation improve. Before the war, this was the house of some neighbors. It was destroyed, and as it is said, there is no other place to bury the bodies. We had to use this place.
To date, more than 2,300 Palestinians have been reported killed, around 57,000 wounded, and more than 350,000 homes destroyed, and at least 1.9 million displaced, after 90 days of Israeli siege against the Gaza Strip. Since October 7th, the Israeli army bombarded the Gaza Strip with more than 45,000 missiles and bombs that, in total, weighed more than 65,000 tons, according to the data provided by Palestinian government. Furthermore, it is reported that Israel deliberately targeted entire residential blocks, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of martyrs in a single bombardment.
The Palestinian Red Crescent Society urgently appealed on Thursday to the international community and the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement for immediate intervention to protect the society's Al-Amal hospital. This includes safeguarding medical staff, patients, and approximately 14,000 internally displaced people seeking refuge at the hospital, all in accordance with international humanitarian law and the Fourth Geneva Convention. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society expresses its deep concern over the repeated attacks by the Israeli occupation forces against its facilities and Al-Amal Hospital, a branch of the society in the city of Khan Yunis in Gaza. At least 6 Palestinian civilians lost their lives and several others sustained injuries on Thursday evening as Israeli airstrikes continue to target homes across the Gaza Strip for a 90th consecutive day. In Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, an Israeli airstrike claimed the life of one Palestinian and left numerous others wounded in the vicinity of the European hospital. Simultaneously, fighter jets flattened to the ground a family residence in the eastern part of the city. Earlier, 5 Palestinians were killed with several more injured as Israeli occupation forces targeted a vehicle in the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. According to local health authorities, over 22,300 people, the majority children and women, have been killed since October 7th, and over 57,200 others have been injured, with nearly 7,000 individuals unaccounted for. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Member countries of the Alba-TCP rejected the judicial decision of Argentina that endorses the seizure of the Emtrasur aircraft, which is a member of the Venezuelan airline Gaza. The Alba-TCP qualified the judicial decision as an attempt to steal the Venezuelan asset, affirming that the illegal retention and the confiscation order, which are a consequence of the unilateral measures imposed by the United States, demonstrate that they do not keep their servility before U.S. imperialism. The Alba countries also reiterated their support to the Venezuelan government in its claim for the plane and supported Venezuela's legal, diplomatic, and political actions to secure its assets. In this context, the plane had arrived in Argentine capital on June 6, 2022, and 2 days later it was scheduled to head to Montevideo, but Uruguay denied it access to its airspace, so it had to return to the Argentine airport, where it was confiscated after being stranded due to lack of fuel being hijacked in the nation. In Germany, authorities in the northern city of Berlin issue a flood alert for the Weser, Aller, and Lines rivers. Emergency services spread hundreds of sandbags in the most vulnerable areas to contain the waters. However, authorities warned of upcoming floods during this weekend. Most cities in the European country are on alert for heavy rainfall since December 2023. In southern Sweden, on the other hand, hundreds of cars remain stuck by snowfall on the E22 highway between the municipality of Horby and Kristianstad as of Wednesday. Meanwhile, in the northern zone, temperatures of minus 43.6 degrees were recorded, the lowest in 25 years. In addition, at least 4,000 homes were without electricity due to the fall of power poles. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, authorities issued more than 300 warnings due to the arrival of the year's fourth storm. The meteorological phenomenon has winds that can reach 150 kilometers, which has already caused the closure of rail transport services while affecting the electric power system. Also, the main streets and highways in England remain closed, while authorities are urging the civilian population to stay indoors. In this regard, the Weather Bureau warns that temperatures are expected to drop over the next few hours. The Belgian province of East Flanders remains on alert following heavy rains and flooding in several towns. The fire department distributed sandbags to protect homes from the effect of the rising waters. Several rural areas are reported flooded, mainly in the eastern provinces and cities, due to the overflowing of the Argo River. A wave of cold air from Siberia and the Arctic region has swept down over western Russia, with temperatures in Moscow and other areas plummeting to 30 degrees Celsius, well below the average temperature for early January. Meteorologists say that last time it was colder than the start of this year was in 1942, more than 80 years ago. While Russia has long New Year's holidays, few people were seen walking in the decorated streets of Moscow or taking part in any outdoor activities. Most residents and visitors to St. Petersburg prefer a visit to a war museum, but not all managed to get in. The extreme cold, however, brought a lot of joy to winter swimmers in city who enjoyed chilly dips in the Neva River. On Wednesday, Ajay Banga, World Bank president, reiterated his commitment to increase lending capacity by encouraging greater investment in the fight against climate change.
I think people in the global south recognize very well that you cannot fight poverty without fighting climate change. The only difference is, what do you mean by climate change? The developed world tends to speak about climate change as mitigation. The developing world tends to speak about climate change as adaptation, because they see the climate change impact on them in terms of irrigation, rainfall, soil degradation, loss of biodiversity, forestry cover, that kind of thing. Whereas we in the developed world tend to talk about climate change in terms of carbon emissions. That's the real difference.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. A teenager armed with a handgun and shotgun killed on Thursday a fellow student and wounded 5 other people at a high school in the Midwestern U.S. state of Iowa. The attack took place at Perry High School around 7:30 a.m. local time, just as students were arriving back to school after their winter break. Assistant Director of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, Mitch Motvert, said 4 of the injured were students and 1 was an administrator. One of the injured victims was in critical condition. The gunman was identified as 17-year-old high school student Taylor Butler, who reportedly died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Motvert told the press that police had found a rudimentary improvised explosive which was rendered safe by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive. Law enforcement officials believe the shooter acted alone, but the motive for his attack is still not known. Ohio Governor Kim Reynolds and Perry's Police Chief Eric Vaughn expressed their support and condolences to the victims and their families.
Hearts are heavy today, and our prayers are with the Perry community. This strikes at the heart of everything that we hold dear. This senseless tragedy has shaken our entire state to the core, and I want this community to know that every Iowan stands with you.
All of our condolences to the victims and their families. They need your thoughts and prayers, as well as time and space to process and to grieve.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni told her European Union partners on Thursday that curbing migration flows from African countries has less to do with offers of charity than strong partnerships coupled with strategic investments in those nations. Meloni told reporters at a year-end news conference that last month's deal on the EU's migration and asylum pact partially improved the situation for Italy and other asylum countries, but does not represent a solution to increase in migrant arrivals. The reforms agreed by EU leaders last month are based on a new set of rules governing member states' response to people arriving in Europe. The agreement has been harshly criticized by humanitarian groups, which claim it will undermine the rights of people on the move.
L'obiettivo è lavorare in Africa.
My goal is to work in Africa, block the departures in Africa, evaluate the possibility to open up hotspots in Africa to establish who has the right and who doesn't to come to Europe. At the same time, work on legal migration. You know what we have done on this. We were the first government to start the migrant working visas decree for 3 years, just to give you an idea. Why? Because another fundamental element of fighting illegal migration is to take steps on legal migration. But to take steps for legal migration, it is important to fight the illegal part.
In France, the National Institute for Statistics and Economic Studies reported that interannual inflation closed in December 2023 with a rise in the Consumer Price Index. The Bureau recorded that 2023 closed with a 3.7% increase in taxpayer costs. The sectors with the highest impact were food with 7.1%, energy with 5.6%, and services with 3.1%, not to mention cigarette, which had an increase of 9.8%. In the case of food, inflation in the last month of the year remained low, after exceeding 12% in 2022. Citizens remain concerned about the year-on-year variation. As for services, the price boom was marked by transportation. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.